Hey everyone, it's Mike Hambright with FlipNerd.com. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Expert Interview Show, where I interview leaders and entrepreneurs from across the real estate investing industry. If you're a member of FlipNerd.com, hey, welcome back. Glad you're here. And if you're not a member, thanks for joining us for the first time. Get on over to FlipNerd.com and you can set up an account, a free account, literally in about 15 seconds. And we're coming up on almost 50,000 subscribers on our list that are following along. I have thousands of properties available, actually about 1,200 properties as we speak here right now that are live on the site. For today's episode, though, episode number 291, I'm here with Dr. Jason Wojo. Jason's a real estate investor. He's a coach. He is the owner of a real estate club. He's a muscle man and a whole lot more. So, hey, Jason, how are you, my friend?
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah, glad to have you back and good to see you. So I never am able to introduce people as good as they can introduce themselves. So tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, man, I'll tell you, I was like most people where I thought that having a job was a key to a successful life. So I went all out in that because, of course, the way to get a successful job is to get a great degree. In my case, I decided to go overboard, and being the overachiever I am, decided to get 4 degrees. 2 bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD later, and I realized this is not what I expected. This isn't what I wanted. A job is nothing but some golden handcuffs, and I got to figure out a way out. After that first job after grad school, went into real estate, and I haven't looked back since. It's been about 6 years now.
So what was your PhD in again? Refresh my memory.
Immunology.
Immunology, wow.
Yeah. You're like, what? Okay. Yeah, so it's the study of the immune system. I do nothing with it now, but what it does is it helps me learn how to think and analyze things and research, and it's been valuable.
Yeah, awesome. Well, for everybody on the show, today we're going to, if you've been following us along here in 2016 so far, I can't believe it's 2016, by the way, but we break the show into 2 parts. So the first part, we're going to talk about steps to quit your job, and Jason's going to share some information with us, and maybe he has a book coming up soon as well, so maybe a few months out, but we'll give a real early maybe sneak peek of some things that are going to be in the book there. And then in part 2 is our Taking Action segment, and we're going to talk about building multiple streams of income. It's something that Jason's done, something that I've done, something that's really important to do as a real estate investor as markets shift, and you need to have some security by having multiple streams of income. So let's go ahead and get this thing started. So Jason, let's dive into some steps to quit your job.
I'll tell you, Mike. So yeah, most of us find ourselves in jobs for whatever reason, because it's easy, because we have to get, a paycheck coming in, because our parents wanted it for us, because it's a family business, whatever it is, whatever the reason. If you're not passionate about your job, you shouldn't be doing it. If you're not loving waking up every single morning, you should be doing something different. So I've put together a series of 5 steps that I think are absolutely critical in making that transition to being a full-time entrepreneur, real estate investor, whatever you want to be. Awesome. And along with those steps, another thing you got to accept and realize, there's a real mindset change that goes along with that. No longer are you working for time. You need now to suit all of your efforts towards profit. So let's dive into those 5 steps, because I know we're on time. Number 1 is you have to create a vision for what you want your life to look like. Everyone thinks that they know what they want their life to look like. When I put students to the test and have them write things down, it's astounding how little they actually have given thought to this. Jim Rohn said that most people spend more time planning a family vacation than they do their life, and he was 100% right. The reason this is important is because you have to set up your business right to help you live the life you want to live. If you want to become a full-time CEO of a large corporation and build a big business, your life will look very, very different than if you're a solopreneur doing real estate investing, half dozen flips a year.
Right.
Now, the next step is if you're going to
be take it real fast on that one, Jason. Creating the vision, and I know you're part of the Life on Air system, and we talked to some other folks before. Talk a little bit about, a lot of people get stuck, even when they start to create a vision for what they want their day to look like or their week to look like, they still kind of get stuck in this like 9 to 5, like the kind of the work day still feels like 9 to 5, but right. That it doesn't have to be that way, right?
It absolutely doesn't. Yeah. And, you'd be amazed. What we have people do is when we want them, the way we overcome this 9 to 5 kind of mental mind shift block is we'll have them pull out a calendar for a week, write in all the things they want to do, all the enjoyable things, whatever it's going to the gym, spending time with family, going for a bike ride, reading, whatever. When they're done that, now we look back and say, okay, where are those blocks of time that are left open that you haven't assigned to something you want to do? And most times we see students that have somewhere between 15 to 20 hours a week left for work. So now they recognize like, hey, you know what? If I really want this life, I only can work 15 hours a week. Yeah. How am I going to do that? What activities am I going to do that are going to generate the amount of money I need to sustain this lifestyle?
Right.
And that's one thing that people have really had an aha moment in changing their mind shift of like, hey, I don't have to work from 9 to 5 because we are programmed to work 9 to 5.
Yep.
I know you know this, Mike, but business studies have been done to show that employees out of that 8-hour day probably work an average of 2 hours a day of real focused work. So that we are automatically trained to be unproductive.
Yeah. Jason, I've got my team is right outside my office here. Hang on. I need to go check on them.
Okay.
I'm joking. Yeah, I believe you. There, Facebook and lots of other distractions going on. So yeah, cool. So sorry, man. Number 2.
Number 2 is if you're going to be a real estate investor or whatever it is, you need to learn that craft. Yeah. For instance, someone who wants to be a real estate investor would do things like go over to flipnerd.com. They would find other reputable sources to learn this craft while they still have the job. You don't want to quit and then figure out what you're going to do. You want to have a plan. Yeah. And this is one of the most basic steps to being good at anything. I mean, you wouldn't not learn how to jump out of a plane before you go skydiving. You need to learn, where the ripcord is. You need to learn how to dive, all these things. So that's the next step. And this one is relatively simplistic. Get out to RIAs, network with other successful people, find all the great resources and tools you can and take advantage of them. People have done this before you. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. That is the slowest and most painful and most expensive way to do it. People complain about buying real estate courses. Trust me, that's the cheapest education you're going to get versus making a mistake out in the real world. Yeah. I've done it.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that keep people from leaving their job is they're fearful that they don't know, they haven't learned these things. But unless you take the time to do it on the side or kind of in parallel to your job, then you're never gonna have that confidence to leave. It's a confidence thing, right? Once you start to learn what you're doing, you start to get, especially in real estate, you get so much more confident. When you've done 5 or 10 deals versus like 0, your confidence is like through the roof, right?
That's right. Before I quit my job, I had done 3 deals, and I felt confident enough that okay, I've learned enough to go on my own. Am I going to make mistakes? Sure. But I needed to build the confidence, and you can't get confidence from a course or from a book. You have to do it.
Right.
And that's where it really becomes to play.
Awesome. So we're done. Number 3.
Number 3 is to get your finances in order. It is going to be a whole lot harder for you to make this jump unless you've done some real foundational things. Number 1, and also I want to point out, these are all temporary. They are not permanent. But while you make that shift, you want to set yourself up to win as much as possible. Number 1, you got to cut expenses. Anything frivolous, anything that's really just extravagant, got to go. Number 2, you want to eliminate debt. I can't tell you, looking back, of how much debt I have gotten myself in and had to dig myself out of foolishly, and it really slowed down my progression and my transition into that full-time real estate position. Yeah. And number 3 is I really recommend that everybody has an emergency fund of at least 3 to 6 months of your living expenses. Now, of course, this plays into the other 2 things, because when your expenses are lower, you need less per month. When your debt is lower, you have less debt service. You're not paying tons of money on your credit cards. Right. So these are the 3 things I think that are important in getting those finances in order. Yeah,
and I think sometimes I've seen people that if you're married and you have a spouse that you live off of one spouse's income, and people can take a little more risk when they've got that situation of another person in the family that can provide a little more runway than you'd have if it was just you, I guess.
That's right, and that's don't. A lot of people have the tendency to spend whatever they make. This is really a part of the process that you need to be disciplined about and really, really cut back. And it's been said before, live like no one else now so you can live like no one else later.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what we're talking about here, so that you can really make this as easy as possible.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great information. All right. Where are we at? Number 4.
Number 4 is related to learning about real estate investing, and we kind of already alluded to it, was get some experience, do at least 3 deals.
Okay.
This is something that, like we already mentioned, you can't learn it from a book or course by itself. You got to put it into practical, real world use.
Yeah. What are some outside of, so obviously we're real estate investor focused here, and I know you coach a lot of people that are in other industries as well. anything outside of real estate, for those that are listening that are kind of outside of real estate, which is probably just a few people here, but that they should think of in terms of how to get experience, outside of real estate?
It depends on the niche, but absolutely, no matter what it is, you need to get your feet wet. You need to get into the pool. It's not something you can get a course from Entrepreneur Magazine and then start a business. You really have to at least put some feelers out there. If you're not going to do an action, you have an idea for a business, start doing some real life beta testing on that to see if this is a viable idea. Is this thing going to be sustainable? Is it going to work? Some of my students now are investigating new ideas for businesses, and they're kind of just in the beta testing phase where they're trying to determine feasibility. Is there a demand for this? Is there a market for it? Are they willing to pay for it? And do you have the right target audience? These are all things you need to know. And you can project all day long, but eventually you need to take that step and put some things into place to see, as a pilot, is this useful? Tim Ferriss in the 4 Hour Workweek talks about his, I can't remember his, it's almost like a fake ad where he puts out a product, and depending on the response he gets, he decides to actually create the product.
Right.
And, that's how he tests it.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of different ways to do this.
Yeah.
But you really got to make sure this is a viable thing. Real estate is real estate, so it's really easy. You just find some deals and do a few deals. Other businesses, it's a little bit more specific to the model with those common factors in place.
Yep. Awesome. So what's number 5, my friend?
Number 5 is to quit. The best line I've seen in the past has been going into and this is Chuck Bauman said this. He said, you go into your employer and you say, I have an eye problem. They say, well, what do you mean? He says, I don't see myself working here anymore. And that's it. And you're done. 5 easy steps, Mike, that anybody can do. It's a framework. It's a system. It's a formula. It's something that I've seen work over and over again. And it's really just deciding to take the steps. And none of these were done overnight. Typically I see people taking somewhere, I'd say on average, it's about a year. Maybe less, maybe more, depending on how aggressive you are, how much time you have, how serious you are. But, give it a little time and set yourself up the right way. Now, both of us have heard so many success stories about people that quit cold turkey, no savings, no experience, and still made it happen. And that is certainly possible. It happens all the time. But, if I was going to jump ship, I would want to know there's a little dinghy waiting for me. Rather than hoping one comes along. Yeah,
absolutely. Talk a little bit about Jason, because I'm trying to think of the excuses people make to not do these things. Okay, so a lot of times people have a family, they have kids. I mean, and I don't want to say that those aren't good excuses. They're obviously the bigger your family is, probably the more difficult it is to do these things. But it definitely gives you even more reason to become self-sufficient. And do these things if that's what you want. So kind of talk about if you have, somebody has this. So let me kind of rewind this. It's pretty common for people to say, I want to get into real estate investing, and their family and friends to say, you're crazy. Why would you do that? The market's too hot now, or the market's too bad. Like whatever cycle it's in, it's a bad time to do it, right? But just talk about how people can kind of overcome those objections that they may have in their own minds.
Well, first of all, you are going to be called crazy. People are going to think you're nuts. Mike, up until last year, I've been self-employed now for about 6 years. Up until last year, my own mom would ask me when I'm getting a job. And what we got to realize is that those people's perspectives and those people's beliefs and values and how they see the world, that's their opinion, and they're projecting that onto us. Right. So they are the ones that need the security, and they're the ones that kind of need or have this view of like, this is the way it works and this is the way it has to be, which isn't true. So you need to expect that. A couple of things I've noticed that successful entrepreneurs have in common, and this will help people overcome some of those things. You have to be comfortable with a degree of uncertainty. Uncertainty means there's a little bit more variety in the potential obstacles or issues you may encounter. But here's the irony with uncertainty. I have seen more people in this past year that have been laid off or fired from safe jobs than I've ever seen, which is really bizarre, even, aside from like 2008, 2009. And so the thing that seems safe and that seems certain almost never is. So the truth is, all you're doing is taking responsibility for that uncertainty rather than letting somebody else make those decisions.
Yeah.
When you can provide value to someone and you are able to convey and sell that value for a financial reward, now you are eliminating uncertainty. So it's one of these things that's really ironic that people are scared of, but the other way is just really just burying your head in the sand. A few other things. Number 2, you need to be a learner. You need to be somebody who's coachable, someone who's always thriving and trying to strive to grow, to always master their art, to expand their knowledge, all these things. You need to be persistent. I don't know if I told you this, Mike. My first real estate deal took me 82 offers.
Yeah.
I was ready to say, you know what, this real estate stuff doesn't work. It's a bunch of bull. And I was coached to keep going. And I finally popped that first one, made half my year's salary on the first deal. And that was the confidence I needed. It took me 10 years to win my first bodybuilding show. It took me 7 years for my PhD. Like, I'm a model of that guy that's too stupid to stop.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason I've been successful.
I have not won my first bodybuilding show, Jason, but
you're almost there, Mike.
To be fair, I'm not even working in that direction. So yeah.
Okay. So you don't have to worry about that one. So these are all things. And now I'll tell you, so a lot of it is fear. Now, one thing that has, and I understand having people being fearful because they have children and things like that. I get it. I totally get it. People are relying on you. But what I've seen is that sometimes that's the biggest reason to succeed.
Yeah.
So when you're working, 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. and you see your kids for that hour a day and you're missing out on their childhood, do you really, what's more important to you? Are you willing to stick your neck out a little bit and take a calculated risk? This isn't an uncalculated risk. It's a calculated risk.
Right.
And then make some great changes for your life and your legacy.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Hey, it's time for the Taking Action portion of this show with Jason Wojo. If you're hearing or watching at this point, you're probably listening to us on iTunes or maybe on YouTube or possibly even on flipnerd.com. If you would like to join for the rest of the show, only Pro and Elite members have access. So please upgrade to continue with us with this show with Jason Wojo. We're about to dive into talking about multiple streams of income and some action steps to get that done. You also have access to hundreds of other expert interviews, real-time access to over 1,100 off-market properties, and a whole lot of other great information. So to get there, just go to flipnerd.com/show291. This is episode number 291 with Jason Wojo. Flipnerd. Are you a member of flipnerd.com, the most robust real estate investing platform in existence, where you can find off-market wholesale deals and great vendors literally in your market? You can get access to advice from experts and learn about local clubs and events right in your backyard. If not, please visit flipnerd.com and register for a free account. You can register in less than a minute. It's pretty much the coolest site that's ever existed in the real estate investing industry. So get on over to flipnerd.com.